The ice fought them every step of the way. Dr. Thomas Verick wiped frost from his scanner screen for the third time in 10 minutes, squinting at the readings that made no sense. Beneath 15 meters of frozen methane and rock, something was generating heat. Not much, just enough to register as a faint pulse, like a heartbeat counting down the centuries. Tell me again why we're drilling into a glorified ice cube on the edge of nowhere? Captain Joran Wells stood behind him, arms crossed, breath misting in the thin atmosphere of Helion 9. The military escort had made his displeasure clear from the moment they'd landed on this frozen moon 3 weeks ago. Thomas didn't look up from his scanner. Because this ice cube contains a research facility that predates the Empire by 2,000 years. Because the energy signature suggests something is still active down there. And because, Captain, someone went to enormous trouble to bury whatever this is where no one would ever find it. The drill broke through with a sudden lurch. Warning lights flashed across the console. Thomas's assistant, a nervous young man named Penn, called out from the excavation tent. "Doctor, we've got a chamber. It's intact. And there's atmosphere inside." That shouldn't be possible. Nothing survived 3 millennia in perfect stasis. Nothing organic, anyway. Thomas grabbed his gear and scrambled down the access shaft, Captain Wells close behind despite his complaints. The military man might be skeptical, but he wasn't stupid enough to let a civilian explore an ancient weapons facility alone. The chamber beyond the ice took Thomas's breath away. Smooth walls curved upward into darkness, covered in symbols he recognized from the oldest human dialects, languages spoken before humanity left Earth. Emergency lighting flickered on as they entered, triggered by their movement. In the center of the room stood a cylinder of crystalline material, 3 meters tall, filled with silvery fluid that seemed to shimmer within a light. Inside floated a woman. She appeared young, perhaps 25, with pale skin and dark hair that drifted around her face like seaweed in a gentle current. She wore a strange bodysuit covered in geometric patterns that pulsed with faint bioluminescence. Her eyes were closed. She looked peaceful, as if merely sleeping. "That's impossible," Wells whispered. "Nothing stays preserved that long. The cellular breakdown alone." "She's not preserved," Thomas interrupted, moving closer to the cylinder. His scanner was going wild, displaying readings that contradicted everything he knew about biology. "She's alive. Her cells are regenerating. There's neural activity. Captain, this woman has been alive for 3,000 years." Penn appeared at the chamber entrance, tablet in hand, face pale. "Doctor, I've been translating the wall inscriptions. You need to see this." Thomas took the tablet, reading the ancient text Penn had painstakingly decoded. His hands began to shake. Project Titan. Final phase. Subject Ven. Neural integration, 100%. Dimensional matrix, stable. Weapon systems, dormant. Warning, premature awakening may result in catastrophic energy discharge. Do not disturb stasis field under any circumstances. Everyone out, Wells ordered immediately. Now. We seal this chamber and contact. The lights flickered. The silvery fluid in the cylinder began to churn. Hairline cracks appeared in the crystalline surface, spreading like frost across a window. A sound filled the chamber, a low vibration that Thomas felt in his bones rather than heard with his ears. The woman's eyes opened. They glowed with soft golden light, unfocused and confused. Her lips moved, forming words in a language dead for millennia. The cracks in the cylinder widened. Liquid spilled across the floor, steaming in the cold air. "Back away slowly," Wells said, hand moving to his sidearm. "Doctor, I said move." The cylinder shattered. The woman collapsed forward, catching herself on hands and knees. She coughed, gasping for air, her whole body shaking. The golden light in her eyes flickered and dimmed. When she looked up at them, Thomas saw fear and confusion in her expression, painfully human despite the impossible situation. "Where?" Her voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. She spoke ancient dialect, but Thomas's translator earpiece rendered it into modern language. "Where am I? What year is this?" "It's okay," Thomas said gently, taking a step forward despite Wells's warning. "You're safe. My name is Thomas Verick. You've been asleep for a very long time." "How long?" She tried to stand, stumbled, caught herself against the remains of the cylinder. The geometric patterns on her suit flared brighter. 3,000 years, give or take. She stared at him, and he watched the realization dawn across her face, followed by something that looked like grief. "The war? Did we win? Did humanity survive?" "Humanity thrives," Wells said carefully. "Though we have no records of any war from your era." Of course you don't. Her laugh was bitter. They erased it. Erased us. The Titans. We were their solution to a problem they couldn't face any other way. She looked down at her hands, watched the patterns on her suit pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. My name is Cassie Venn. And I'm not entirely human anymore. Before anyone could respond, every piece of equipment in the chamber went haywire. Alarms screamed. Pens shouted from the entrance that their orbital sensors were detecting massive energy signatures entering the system. Dozens of them. A fleet. The Empire had found them. Cassie's head snapped up, eyes widening. No. They can't be here. I'm not ready. I don't know how to control. Control what? Wells demanded. She met his eyes, and Thomas saw terror there. Myself. Admiral Draven Cross stood on the bridge of the Imperial Dreadnought Sovereign's Fist, watching the frozen moon grow larger on the viewscreen. His fleet of 43 warships surrounded him in perfect formation, a display of power that had made entire systems surrender without firing a shot. Today would be no different. Admiral, we're detecting unusual energy readings from the surface, reported his tactical officer. The signature matches nothing in our database. It's old, sir. Pre-Imperial. Draven smiled. Pre-Imperial meant valuable. Ancient human technology fetched astronomical prices on the black market, and official discovery meant first claim for the Empire. More importantly, it meant promotion for him. Prepare boarding parties. I want whatever they found down there secured within the hour. He adjusted his medals, already imagining how this discovery would look in his report to the Empress. Lieutenant Myra Heston stood at her station, monitoring communications. Something about this felt wrong. The archaeological team on Hellion 9 had transmitted only fragmentary messages before their signal cut out. The last word she'd heard clearly was weapon. Now they were going in with full military force against civilians who might just need help. Sir, shouldn't we attempt contact first? Standard protocol requires. Standard protocol is for standard situations, Lieutenant. Draven cut her off. Unknown pre-imperial technology requires immediate containment. They'll thank us later. Myra doubted that, but kept silent. She'd learned that arguing with Admiral Cross was a fast route to permanent latrine duty. On the surface, Cassia stumbled as another wave of disorientation hit her. 3,000 years. Everyone she knew was dust. The war she'd been created to fight was apparently forgotten. And now her body was responding to perceived threats, systems activating that she'd barely learned to control before they put her in stasis. We need to get you out of here, Thomas said urgently, supporting her arm. Can you walk? I can do more than walk, Cassie replied, but her voice shook. That's the problem. I can feel them up there. 43 ships. Weapons charged. They think I'm a prize to be collected. Captain Wells was already on his communicator, trying to reach his own ship in orbit. This is Wells to Pioneer's Hope. We need immediate extraction. We have a situation. The response crackled with static. Captain, this is Hope. We're being hailed by an Imperial fleet. They're ordering us to stand down and prepare for boarding. Sir, what do we do? Wells looked at Cassie, then at the equipment readings still going haywire around her. Tell them we have civilians in distress. Request they hold position until. Negative, Captain. Draven's voice cut through every channel, amplified and authoritative. This is Admiral Draven Cross of the Imperial Grand Fleet. All vessels are to power down immediately. Any resistance will be met with force. We are claiming this site and all discoveries therein under Imperial salvage law. You have 5 minutes to comply. Cassie closed her eyes, trying to calm the panic rising in her chest. She could feel her body responding to the threat, ancient systems warming up like engines that had been dormant for millennia. The patterns on her suit glowed brighter, spreading up her neck, across her face. What's happening to you? Penn asked, backing away. My body was designed to respond to military threats, Cassie explained, her voice strained. They integrated me with technology that doesn't just enhance me, it replaces parts of me. I have weapon systems in my bones, power cores where my organs should be, dimensional storage spaces folded into my cells. I'm not a person who was enhanced. I'm a weapon shaped like a person. Can you control it? Wells asked urgently. I don't know. Before they put me under, I'd barely completed training. I was supposed to have handlers, support teams, psychological conditioning. She opened her eyes, and they were glowing gold again. I was never meant to wake up alone. In orbit, Draven grew impatient. 5 minutes had passed, and the archaeological vessel hadn't responded with surrender. Tactical, fire a warning shot across their bow. Let them see what happens to those who ignore Imperial authority. Myra's fingers froze over her console. Sir, sensors show civilians on that ship. If we miss. I don't miss, Lieutenant. Fire. The Sovereign's fist launched a plasma bolt that streaked across space, passing within meters of the Pioneer's Hope. The smaller ship's shields flared, barely absorbing the energy wash. On the surface, Cassie gasped as if physically struck. Her body interpreted the weapon's fire as an attack, not just on her, but on humans she was programmed to protect. The golden light spread completely across her skin. Her feet lifted off the ground, and the air around her began to shimmer with heat. I can't stop it, she said, voice distorting, layered with harmonics that sounded like multiple people speaking at once. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Thomas reached for her, but Wells pulled him back. Don't touch her. Look at the readings. She's generating enough energy to power a city. Above them, Draven ordered his fleet into attack formation. All ships, target the moon's surface. Precision strikes on the excavation site. I want that technology intact, but I want those civilians compliant. Show them the cost of defiance. 43 warships charged their weapons. Cassie felt every targeting lock like needles against her skin. 3,000 years ago, her handlers would have given her clear commands, helped her channel the overwhelming power flowing through her body. Now, exhausted and confused, she had only instinct. Her programming screamed at her to protect, to defend, to eliminate the threat. She felt a yawn building, the kind that came with deep fatigue. She tried to suppress it, but her jaw opened anyway, wide and involuntary. What emerged wasn't air. It was a wave of dimensional energy, a tear in space itself propagating outward from her mouth at the speed of light. The sound, if it could be called sound, bypassed human ears entirely and struck directly at the molecular bonds holding matter together. In orbit, Myra watched her sensor screen dissolve into chaos. Admiral, energy spike. Massive energy spike from the surface. It's. The wave hit the fleet. The Sovereign's fist simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris, just a perfect sphere of space where a dreadnought had been a moment before. The effect rippled outward, catching ship after ship. Some vanished completely. Others shattered into component atoms, breaking down into their base elements and scattering like dust in solar wind. Draven had perhaps 2 seconds to realize what was happening before the wave reached his bridge. His last thought was one of absolute incomprehension. Myra's ship, positioned at the fleet's edge, caught only the periphery of the effect. Her shields collapsed. Hull plating aged centuries in seconds, corroding and crumbling. But the ship held together, tumbling out of formation, alarms screaming, half the crew unconscious from the dimensional shock. On the surface, the wave dissipated. Cassie dropped to her knees, the golden light fading from her eyes. She stared at her hands, horror written across her face. What did I do? She whispered. What did I just do? Thomas checked his orbital monitor, hands shaking. Where 43 warships had been, only debris fields and one badly damaged vessel remained. Thousands of people gone in an instant. Wells spoke quietly, his military composure barely holding. You just destroyed an Imperial fleet with a yawn. Cassie looked up at them, tears streaming down her face. I didn't mean to. I couldn't control it. I'm too dangerous. You need to get away from me. But Thomas knelt beside her, ignoring Wells's protest. You're not dangerous, Cassie. You're scared and alone, and you were woken into a nightmare. None of this is your fault. Tell that to the people I just killed. In the crippled Imperial ship, Myra pulled herself to her feet, bleeding from a cut on her forehead. Around her, the few surviving crew members were in shock. She limped to the communications console and sent out an automated distress signal. Then she pulled up the sensor logs from the moment before the attack. The energy signature, the dimensional readings, the way space itself had warped. She'd never seen anything like it. What are you? She whispered, staring at the data. On a distant Imperial world, automated systems detected the fleet's destruction. Warning signals propagated through the Empire's military network. Within hours, the Empress would know that someone, or something, had just wiped out a full fleet in seconds. And the Empire never forgave those who made it bleed. The stolen Imperial shuttle rattled as it pushed through the debris field, weaving between fragments of destroyed warships. Captain Wells gripped the controls with white knuckles, his military training the only thing keeping them alive as automated defense systems from the wrecked fleet occasionally sparked to life, firing blindly into space. Cassie sat in the back compartment, knees pulled to her chest, staring at nothing. She hadn't spoken in 3 hours, not since they'd fled Hellion 9 aboard the only functional ship they could find. The golden patterns on her suit had faded to dull gray, as if her body was shutting down in response to her horror. Thomas worked frantically at a portable terminal, scrolling through data files he'd managed to download from the ancient facility before they evacuated. There has to be something here, he muttered. Some explanation, some instruction manual for what you are. I'm a killer, Cassie said quietly. That's all the explanation needed. You're a survivor of a war we don't even remember, Thomas countered, not looking up. And I intend to find out why. Wells called back from the cockpit. We've got company. That damaged Imperial ship is limping after us. They're not in any shape to fight, but they're definitely tracking us. Aboard the crippled Knight's Vigilance, Lieutenant Myra Heston sat alone in what remained of the bridge. Most of the crew had evacuated in escape pods, picked up by nearby Imperial patrols. She'd volunteered to stay with the dying ship, ostensibly to maintain systems until salvage arrived. In truth, she wanted time to think without her superiors breathing down her neck. The woman on that moon had cried after destroying the fleet. Myra kept returning to that detail. Weapons didn't cry. Monsters didn't apologize. Whatever that woman was, she hadn't wanted to kill anyone. Myra pulled up the ancient facility's data signature, running it through every historical database she could access. Most came back empty, but one obscure academic archive returned a single reference: Project Titan, classified, Void War era, access denied. The Void War. She'd heard that term exactly once, in a forbidden history course during her academy days. The professor had been dismissed the next week, and the curriculum scrubbed. The official imperial narrative insisted humanity's history began with the Empire's founding. Everything before was dismissed as myth or tribal conflict. But myths didn't destroy fleets with a yawn. Myra made a decision that would brand her a traitor. She set her ship to follow the stolen shuttle at a distance, then sent a tight beam transmission on an encrypted channel. Unknown vessel, this is Lieutenant Myra Heston, sole remaining crew of Imperial ship Knight's Vigilance. I'm not here to attack. I want to talk. I want to understand what happened back there. In the shuttle, Wells's hand moved to the weapon controls. It's a trap. But Cassie's head lifted, eyes focusing for the first time since the massacre. No. She's telling the truth. I can feel it. My body reads people, their intent. She's confused, curious, but not hostile. You're going to trust your instincts after what happened? Wells asked. I have to trust something, Captain. Otherwise, I might as well fly into the nearest star and be done with it. Thomas looked up sharply. Don't say that. Don't even think it. Cassie met his eyes. I killed thousands of people today, Doctor. I'm a weapon that can't be controlled. Maybe the universe would be better off without me. Maybe the universe needs you, Thomas replied. Just not the way you were used before. He turned his terminal around, showing her a file he'd decrypted. I found something. A personal log from one of the scientists who worked on Project Titan. Her name was Dr. Helena Strand. She was one of the people who made you what you are. Cassie stared at the screen, where a woman's face appeared in a grainy recording. Middle-aged, exhausted, her eyes carrying the weight of impossible decisions. The recording played. Dr. Strand's voice was hoarse, as if she'd been talking for hours. This is my final log entry. In 2 hours, Subject Ven will enter stasis, and Project Titan will be sealed. If anyone is hearing this, it means the Voidborn have returned, and humanity needed her again. Cassie leaned forward, every word hitting like a physical blow. We didn't want to do this, Dr. Strand continued. Cassie volunteered, but how can any 20-year-old truly understand what it means to have their humanity stripped away, to become a living weapon? But the Voidborn gave us no choice. They came from deep space, from places between galaxies where reality grows thin. They weren't creatures, not in any biological sense. They were tears in existence itself, entropy given form and purpose. They consumed everything, matter, energy, even time. Conventional weapons passed through them. Nuclear fire meant nothing. They were unmaking our universe, one star system at a time. The recording flickered, showing brief images of space battles. Ships fired at shadows that seemed to eat light itself. Planets crumbled to dust, their atoms scattered across empty void. So we built the Titans. 6 volunteers, enhanced with technology that merged human consciousness with dimensional engineering. We made them into living portals, capable of touching the same strange physics the Voidborn used. Cassie was the last, and the strongest. She alone held off the final Voidborn incursion at the Battle of Kepler's End, giving our fleet time to escape. Cassie's hands trembled. Fragmented memories stirred, pieces of a life she'd forgotten. Screaming into darkness. Golden light pouring from her body. The sensation of reality bending around her will. We won, Dr. Strand said, but at a cost we couldn't bear to remember. The Titans frightened people more than the Voidborn did. After the war, the government decided to erase all records, hide the truth. They put the Titans in stasis and buried them where no one would find them, insurance against threats they prayed would never return. The recording showed Dr. Strand stepping closer to the camera, tears in her eyes. Cassie, if you're hearing this, I'm sorry. We should have let you rest. But if you're awake, it means something terrible is coming. The Voidborn may have returned, or something equally dangerous has emerged. You were created to protect humanity. Not to serve governments or empires, but to guard the species itself. Remember that. Remember who you chose to be. The recording ended, silence filled the shuttle. Finally, Wells spoke, his voice rough. Voidborn. An enemy so dangerous we erased it from history. Thomas was already pulling up star charts, cross-referencing anomalies. His face went pale. Oh no. What is it? Cassie asked. These readings, scattered across the past decade. Ships vanishing in deep space. Entire mining colonies going silent. Exploration probes losing contact. We attributed it to equipment failure, pirates, natural phenomena. But look at the pattern. He displayed the incidents on a map. They formed a rough line, pointing inward toward colonized space. Something is moving through the dark regions. Something that leaves nothing behind. Cassie stood, the gray patterns on her suit flickering back to life with faint gold. She walked to the cockpit, staring out at the stars. They're coming back. That's why my chamber activated, why the stasis failed. I was designed with autonomous awakening protocols, triggered by detecting Voidborn energy signatures. Can you fight them? Wells asked. If they're as powerful as that recording suggested. I don't know. Before, I had training, support, other Titans fighting beside me. Now I'm alone, and I can barely control myself. She looked at her reflection in the viewport, seeing the gold light in her eyes. But Dr. Strand was right about one thing. I didn't volunteer to become this so I could hide. I did it to protect people. Myra's voice crackled over the unknown vessel. I've been analyzing the data. I think I know where the Voidborn incursion point will be. There's a deep space monitoring station in the Abyss sector that's been reporting strange readings for weeks. Dimensional fluctuations, temporal distortions. If something is coming through, it'll be there. Thomas looked at Cassie. What do you want to do? She took a deep breath, feeling the power flowing through her body, the dimensional spaces folded into her cells, the weapon systems that had destroyed a fleet without her conscious control. She was terrifying, dangerous, a relic from a war people chose to forget. But she was also the only thing standing between humanity and extinction. We go to the Abyss sector, Cassie said. We find out if the Voidborn are really returning. And if they are. She clenched her fists, golden light spiraling around her fingers. I finish what I started 3,000 years ago. Wells set a new course. Behind them, Myra's damaged ship adjusted its trajectory to follow. And ahead, in the dark spaces between stars, something ancient and hungry stirred, sensing the awakening of its old enemy. The war that humanity had forgotten was about to remember them. Far from the shuttle, in the cold depths beyond charted space, reality rippled. Something that was not matter and not energy pressed against the barrier between dimensions, testing it like a predator testing a fence. It had fed on the death of galaxies during the long eons, growing strong in the spaces where light could not reach. Now it felt the familiar resonance of dimensional technology, the same energy signature that had driven it back millennia ago. The Titans. Specifically, one Titan. The strongest. The last. If the Voidborn could feel emotion, it might have felt anticipation. Instead, it simply recognized a threat that needed elimination. It began to push harder against reality's fabric, preparing to tear through. In the shuttle, Cassie suddenly gasped, doubling over. The patterns on her suit flared bright gold, and her eyes rolled back. Cassie. Thomas caught her as she collapsed. When she opened her eyes again, they glowed like small suns. They know I'm awake. They're coming for me. We have maybe 3 days before they break through. 3 days to prepare, Wells said grimly. Can we even fight them? Cassie straightened, and despite her fear, despite her guilt over the fleet she'd destroyed, a fierce determination hardened her expression. I was asleep for 3,000 years. They've forgotten what a Titan can do when she's ready for them. She looked at her hands, at the golden light dancing between her fingers. It's time they remembered why humanity survives. The shuttle accelerated toward the Abyss sector, racing against an enemy older than stars, carrying the last guardian of a species that refused to surrender to the dark. Behind them, the debris field of the destroyed Imperial fleet drifted in silent testimony to the power awakening in their midst. Ahead lay answers, danger, and perhaps redemption for a weapon learning to be human again. The yawn that shattered stars had been an accident, a moment of lost control. But what came next would be deliberate. Cassie Venn, the last Titan, was going to war. And this time, she would choose her own terms.